involves some very significant behavioral changes. Yes, we're asking our policymakers and political leaders to enact certain reforms, but implementation is as good as the behavior change that is going to accompany some of these changes. And that comes right back to us. What are the values? What does it mean to be a Ghanaian these days? I have come to realize that this means differently stands him. It gave me a chance to pause to reflect that maybe truly I don't understand what it means to be an 8-year-old anymore. Because at the time when I was 8, the environment was different and he feels misunderstood. So it's necessary for us to have intergenerational dialogues because what you may think holds true for you at the time you experience Ghana may not necessarily hold true for different generations. So until we're increasingly having these conversations and listening to the lived experience, her current roles include a regional coordinator for Girl Up Ghana and being part of the board members of the Girls Advisory Council. Radia is passionate about community development and public service. So thank you once again to all my panelists. Let me join you. Okay, good morning once again. So I'll kick off with a generation so that this is an equal platform. So let me kick off by values, Radia, young woman. What does that mean to you? What are the values you think of? Or what does value even mean to you as a Ghanaian? And once you're done, if you can.
I believe values are the principles. Yeah, so for me, my core value I would say is mutual respect, cooperation, or from let's say even leaders in different settings try to act superior towards us and essentials.
Thank you very much. I may not be able to speak, from a very personal, what you call a perspective, because I represent an institution that is very central to, changing of mindsets. And since yesterday, I have to emphasize the fact that bringing mindset important. Oftentimes, when we talked about economics and then transformation in terms of development. People hear a lot about per capita. You hear a lot about what you call it, building schools, but at the heart of all this is the human being and the mindset. So to sort of appreciate the fact that asset has brought this conversation on values as a critical aspect to the next steps that will be taken in the future. And secondly, I was pretty excited when Shamima gave us the opportunity to have some interaction, because as a student of social science, different generation, ask them what are the values that they cherish. First of all, a very young man, very impressionistic, he told me, now among the youth, what we are losing is patience. The youth, young persons don't have patience. And why? Rightly so. We live in an era of what we call creative distraction. Every day new things come up. How can so we appreciate that of the youth. Then the second person I spoke about, also not from Accra, from another part of the country, talked about the notion of development. Should development be something that is always planned, crystallized in Accra, and then deployed to the to the other parts of the country? Right. And then the third person, who belongs to a retired public servant, sort of in governance, he spoke about two things. One is the fact that he spoke about demand side of governance, which I'm not quite sure I understand so well, but he made patriotism that his generation really appreciate. So these are the three things that I pick, and coming here to sit in this conversation that I think should be the first thing that I should say before even coming into other things that I have to say from my institution and then from myself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, personally, I would say that values to me are beliefs and principles that guide the choices we make. So, just as individuals and citizens, we are all humans and we do have different behavioral patterns. But if you have something in general that we exude and believe in, it certainly channels into our that's how we respond to affairs in the country. So, personally, I would say I actually believe so much in honesty, and I picked that so well. When I work with people or when I relate with anybody, I try to maintain that value, honesty, and that has been so helpful. I think if we all have this in the country, it would be a great benefit as well.
Thank you. Hi. It's a mic again. Okay. Hi. So when it comes to values, um, as a citizen of this country, I feel that our rights should be respected regardless of our gender, regardless of our age, regardless of our disability status. That is something we are lacking very much right now. Um, I feel that our value system has gone down the drain in the past 20 years. Right now, we are more money centered rather than Not how we were about 20, 30 years ago, where we were more community centered, we were more willing to look out for each other. Right now, it's like everybody for himself, God for us all, and that is something that I feel is detrimental to our society. So I mean, although progress is good, I think we should go back to our old school values, where there was a lot of respect in our community, and not just amongst the elders or whatever, but the fact that you are a Ghanaian citizen afforded you a level of respect which has gone down as a result of progress. I feel that progress can be done, can go hand in hand with our cultural values and our and I mean what it means for us to be citizens of this country. And
Thank you. Okay, so I hear certain common, respect, mutual respect, what it means to be a Ghanaian, honesty. We have some of these in our national anthem, true humility as Ghanaians. But as Dr. Imrana mentioned, older generation feel the younger ones have lost a sense of patriotism. So this goes to Radia and Raphael. Do you agree? And if so, what is contributing to that? Young people feeling less patriotic, or what does that even mean? Do you feel you ought to give something to Ghana or not? So, Radia, let me start with you.
So I don't actually believe that young people have lost that sense of patriotism for the country. But then what makes it look that way is because of the current political system we find ourselves in. These days, you realize that if you're not affiliated to one party or the other, it's very difficult for you to get opportunities within the country. And because of this, it makes a lot of young people feel like other countries are better suited to stay in than to stay in the country. So it makes them do everything possible just to leave the country and settle elsewhere. But then if the country were made suitable for us, I don't think this conversation would have even come up. We actually love our country, and if it makes us comfortable, we would do everything patriotic for our country, we'll do everything to stay within. We want to build our country, but then most of the times we don't even get the chance to bring our ideas on board towards how we want the country to become. So I don't believe that young people are actually not patriotic, but it's because of certain conditions that we find ourselves in.
So, you're saying there isn't the enabling environment for you to feel patriotic or to exhibit your patriotism.
That's right.
Okay, Raphael, your take.
Okay, so I would personally build up on what she just said. But I would also say that the young people in the country do lack some, not really like lack, but do they do have it, but it is actually to some extent not that strong enough. So let's say, for example, when we come into the university status here, so I believe most of the young people here are university students or graduates. When it comes to things that deals with, politics, for example, they do not really partake. There is a sense that is actually triggered towards those particular engagements. So people feel that they don't find right values in politics. It's something that has been spread over the years and many complaints from people, both the non-educated and then the educated, from the foundations. So people have grown up with those things and they tend not to be actively interested in it. And they look forward to other sides that actually afford their better, let me say, their personal benefits that would help them instead of thinking of the other side. So, and also I think most of the young people we have here in Ghana are actually looking forward for a better future for themselves. So just like she rightly mentioned, partly, just as I am here, I want a bright future for myself, a better future. I have a vision and I really want to pursue it. So let's say if I leave my country, Ghana, and I come back to Ghana later, that's what many of us say. but some of us do not stay, some of us stay there. It doesn't really mean they're not patriotic, but to some extent, it may, it may. But the thing is, they're looking forward for a place where they can have a good, well, something that I think we can work on. If we can tackle the problems that are facing the young people here, we can increase their level of patriotism. I mean, the level of patriotism. So let's look at the youth unemployment and let's see how well we can reduce that. Like some of those challenges that are being faced by young people. Let's see how well we can tackle them down and reduce them. And I'm sure they'll respond to it.
Okay, I hear you, and I want to push you to further because I'm hearing you say we want to give, but I'm also hearing you say we want a better future for ourselves. So I want to link that to the spirit of volunteerism because this came up in our panel yesterday where it says one participant mentioned this sense of we don't have that volunteerism again. It's eroded. Right now, as Farida said, it's almost self-serving, where we're looking at what is in it for me, right? I want a better future for myself. So I will do what it takes to get that. But what about volunteers? What about serving the country? So ponder on that for a second. Let me go to Dr. Murana. In your work with the NCC, we're talking about the sentiments of young people and this feeling of we don't think Ghana is serving us rightly. I know you go beyond into communities that are hard to reach. Are the same true for those communities? And what is contributing to this?
Thank you very much, Farida. First of all, let me also state that when we look at the current population census that we did in 2021, you have close to more than 70% of our population being people in the below the age of 35. That is a significant number. And you hear this sort of, how do I call it, despondency among young persons. Those who are about 70 or so percent of population are getting so different, complaining about everything is a cause for worry. And my point is that, for instance, National Commission for Civic Education, every year we come out with a working theme. And our working theme for this year is that together we can build Ghana, get involved. And that is the message we sound to young persons. We go to the communities to talk about. How do you get involved? Young persons complain about, you hear that if you want employment, you have to know someone. But we live in a democratic dispensation and we are talking about values. Democracy comes with its own form of values. Participation is crucial. Young persons should acknowledge that democratic participation goes beyond, even though important, queuing to register to vote, voting on election day, to substantive forms of participation where you should get involved in the day-to-day activities of governance. If you think something is going wrong, you are more than 70%. I think it behoves on you more to right that wrong than to merely complain about it. Young persons should acknowledge that governance is a process. It entails a lot of things. I was talking about participating substantively. We have structures, democratic structures, the courts, the police, and these formal structures interface with even traditional structures, our traditional authorities. How do young persons make use of these structures, right, to ventilate grievances? When we're holding this discussion here at the University of Ghana, to what extent to students of today, really, beyond probably going to protest over increase in school fees, holding leadership accountable in a very substantive manner? To what extent very, in a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting with leadership of Graduate Students Association. Going on well. There are so many bills that have gone through Parliament on education. I asked them, is there any point that GRASAC submitted a memorandum to Parliament that we want to influence this policy in a certain way? Right. So these are the issues that should be re-echoed to young persons. Things are not going the way we want them to go. Things could be done better, but who are to
Putting aside, I know your NCC hat is on, NCC hat is on, but generationally, right? I agree with all what you're saying. Has your generation set an example at pushing and interacting with state organizations beyond in exercising their democratic rights as you're pushing? Because as we know, even at the household level, we learn by example because we have something or someone to look forward to. So reflecting on that, has the example been set for young people to engage with these institutions in the way that you're saying?
Thank you very much. It's an observation. And honestly, when you talk about generations, sometimes people get deceived by my, my I'm not very old in a way. that is on the lighter side. I think I think this country, despite all that we are talking about, we've made progress. Yesterday, I heard the conversation. There has been talk about one party system, military regime. What have you not seen? Just suppose if you want to go academic, let's take the indices, the indicators of development, and make comparison. In those years that we had military regimes, we had one party states, and compare them to the times that we are having a democratic system of government. Let's make that comparison. And let me also then say that, you see, for young persons here, what we are seeing today didn't come as a gift. As a student of history, there has been struggle to get us where we are today. And those struggles were mostly led at that time by by then, people of your age. And when we talk about generation, that generation may not have the energy, right? In terms of when I talk about energy, you get what I mean. The strength that you have today, right? And you are better disposed. We live in a time that there has been so much technological, what do you call it, advancement. And you young persons are in the center of this. How do we make good use of that? So if you talk about my generation, that was largely led by young persons. And today, what are we seeing? We are living in a country or in a world that in the most recent past has been ravaged, right, by unprecedented pandemic. And the difficulties that we are seeing today are not necessarily peculiar to this, our Ghana. And day in and day out, we hear about, people trying to leave. You want to leave the country. Well, we appreciate that there are difficult times. Even if you are living, it should not be out of outrightly throwing away patriotism, outrightly throwing away who are we leaving behind? And on any day that you leave, know that you are leaving something behind. Either you are leaving our parents behind, we are leaving our children behind, we are leaving our young siblings behind. We go there as individuals. Those that we are leaving behind, what should they do? What are we going to do with them? How are we going to come back to meet them?
Yes, okay. I'll come back to you, Dr. Imran, and I would be curious to know what or how the older generations have squeezed out younger ones in engaging in some of these civic processes and even creating a hostile environment where young people do not feel that they can engage. Farida, let me come to you now. You have the circumstances that would have made it almost impossible to thrive. And personally, Ghana, do you feel there have been times that Ghana has let you down as a citizen? Because I know you have actually served Ghana in several ways, but do you feel the interaction has been mutual?
Single day. As long as it's not what it should be. It is letting me down as a citizen. Every time I go somewhere and I have to climb a step, I'm let down as a citizen. Every time I go somewhere and I'm treated differently because I have a disability, I'm let down as a citizen because the community hasn't been educated to deal with people with disabilities. I still have a backward view on disability, and it's up to the NCCE and the other government institutions, as well as traditional leaders and community leaders, to educate the public on what having a disability really is, and the fact that is just a part of somebody's makeup. It does not constitute the person's whole being. So yes, I'm let down as a citizen every single day as a Ghanaian, and and, and that is why I fight. I fight because I feel that we can do better as a society. It doesn't take that much. It just takes an effort and a willingness to learn. I feel that when it comes to disability, as long as it doesn't affect you, you don't care. So what happens is I find a lot of people who get disabled midway through their lives. They suddenly start realizing that, oh, so this is what you have been going through the whole time. This is what you are talking about. Oh, I didn't realize there was a step here. Because you just go about lightly going about in your daily life without having a care for anybody who is different from. So you young people, my message to you today is that disability, it does not discriminate. It can happen to anybody at any point upon in their life. So take an interest in things that do not affect you, because they may affect you later on, or they may affect your loved ones, or even if they don't affect any Ghanaian citizen like you, should make you want to do something about it. And yes, there have been times that Ghana has made me feel proud to be a Ghanaian citizen. There have been times that I have been elevated because not because I have a disability. I have been asked to serve on government boards. I've been asked to serve on government committees. I've been asked to speak at various forums which 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 talk about Ghana in a good light. So yes, I'm proud to be a Ghanaian, but that doesn't mean that if
Great. And Farida, still on you. What are some of the values? If we need to change, if some of the things that we're saying, and looking at it from the inclusivity lens, what are some of the core values that we need to imbibe as Ghanaians?
people who are different from us, we need to be more inclusive. We need to realize that our life should be ostracized from society. We need to be patient. We need to realize that people do not learn at the same. We need to realize that people have their unique abilities, and we have to find a way of amplifying those unique abilities and making them them successful in whatever they are doing, because that is how I got my into my career, because I could not write very well. I started using the computer at a very early age, and and it became a career path for me. If I had been in a conventional educational system where it was insistent that I write with a pen and a paper, I probably wouldn't have gotten this far, because so you cannot judge people based on the conventional or what is conventional. We should judge people based on their individual abilities and what they can do.
Great, thank you. So inclusivity as a value, as a nation, It's one we cannot do without. So my young people, back to you. Earlier on, we were talking about this friction between I want to do what's best for me. I have a young person on my team, and he tells me now there's all about money. Is eroding. So how do you put these two together? On one hand, you want to self-serve, do what's best for you. On the other hand, who's going to build Ghana? Where's the volunteerism? What do you give back? How do you give back as a young person? So Radia.
Um, I'm finding it difficult to actually believe that young people do not like volunteering. Because for me, I belong to so many different youth groups and youth networks, and there are so many youth involved in it, and there are 7 roles as volunteers. And we are really trying to do things that will build the future we want. But as I was saying earlier, sometimes we don't even get that enabling environment to do that. They use as let me put it as they use as the you see issues of you come in that field and then you are just there to add to the numbers. They don't even listen to what you have to say. Other times too, so it's just looks like we are trying, but to what end?
So you feel even when you engage, when you talk, it doesn't matter.
That volunteerism is good, very, very, very important. I personally volunteer in a number of organizations apparently, and I started that I think in my second year, let me say first year when I was at the University of Ghana, so I get as well. And I worked there not as a volunteer, not for a dime, not for a money, like let me say any tip or any token, but I understand the importance of volunteerism. It's an avenue for you as a young person, as you work with people and as you understand how it feels like to work in the professional world. And I still feel like some young people have times you have different people reaching into my DM on WhatsApp, like texting me, I mean, and they're asking connect them to somewhere. And over the period, they have challenges continuing it. And some of these things could be because of the cost of volunteering. So let's say if I have to go from here stability to continue that is to keep it going. And some of the people too, as many students on campus, or let me say young people generally, do not really understand the main importance of volunteerism and why they need to be. Let them know, give them a public awareness that volunteerism is important. As a student, you have 4 years and 8 semesters. You should equip all of them with volunteering at different places.
It push you further. You see, you're speaking about volunteering in the sense of building your employability skills, right? But then there's volunteering for nation building, where you might not get anything out of it. 21st September is National Volunteerism Day. There's always a lot of activities that are put together. Beach cleanup, gutters, lots of volunteerism. And we don't get a lot of young people turning up. If I was to put up a stand right now and say internship, I'll get a long line of young people showing up. Why? Because there's still some self-serving element to it. But when it becomes activities where you might not get anything back, but you're doing this for Ghana, we don't see as much turn up. And I want to interrogate that a bit further in that why is that not there? Why is that not there? I'll come back to you. Dr. Mirana, I said I was going to come to you. You talked earlier on about your generation, of these things, but I want to know, how have you contributed to marginalizing young people and squeezing them out in being able to engage with some of these processes? You're hearing our younger ones when they do their annual youth surveys in terms of youth political voices. So, any comments on that?
Something missing. Read our constitution. You look at the chapter 6 of the constitution that talks about the directive principles of state policy. Pure democracy is the one that assures the basic necessities of life for its people as a fundamental, communities that people have to travel 6 kilometers to get water. You still have these challenges accessing. He mentioned the fact that if you want to go to a community to volunteer, at least there should be something that I should use for transportation. To that end, why we should say Ghana is normal. Are these the reasons? Bottlenecks. Yes, there are challenges. What is the way forward? The way forward is for us to, we get involved by holding leadership accountable, right? Not to think that, look, I'm too young to do this. You are above 18, you vote, something is going on in civic education. We have gaps in terms of the way we deliver civic education. And always say, I'm leaving National Commission for Civic Education. We collectively have to pull effort together, right, to build our system. And in that building of the system, I reiterate the fact people are accountable, right? So if you ask of the young persons saying that our generation has failed, I don't want us to put that discussion into that you don't engage technology in a very progressive way. When you buy your data for 20 cities, what do you use it for? Do you use it to watch the most trending music? So we also have those things, but I think this is not the the platform for us to do this back and forth. I think this is a platform for us to acknowledge where we have reached, acknowledge the gaps that we have, acknowledge the role that early person, your energy and our energies being put together so that we can make the progress we want to see.
Great. And that brings and together, regardless of what generation we find ourselves in. Because if we're looking at the future that we want to do a quick round of what future you want us to move together in unity and to move ahead in unity. What do you want from the generation ahead of? So, Raja, let's start. Those behind you.
Should give us the space. They should give us the chance. They should listen to our voice. We have wonderful ideas. Sometimes, excuse me to say, those behind us see us as to stifle you. You have the you have the ideas. You can make the impact. Sometimes we are not before you can do something. I can do something to the best of my ability if you give me the.
And now, what are you leaving for the generation behind you? What are you committing to leaving for the generation behind you?
So for our generation, I think we should do better. So see us as stifling them or limiting their abilities. Sometimes you realize that people have their ideas. We have their ideas. We can do better. But when we will now also see us in a different light. So we have to bridge that kind of generational gaps. We have to be able to be cohesive.
For Radia is asking for openness and inclusivity, and she and her generation are committing to giving the same. That yes, when we get there, it's not that there's a saying that there must be something in the water up there. When I was a student, economic student in level, why can't they fix the issues up there? So when you get there, you don't fall into the same trap. Dr. Imrana.
Okay, so let me start for ourselves first. I think for us that we have to be part of process of rekindling hope in young persons, because in most countries, when young persons lost hope in the future, we see what we are seeing by it. So we have to be able to be part of the process of rekindling hope for young persons. And we are talking about values. One thing that I think areas, but we have urbanized to a very large extent. And urbanization comes with its advantages and then the disadvantages. On the social front, when you wake up now as a parent, running out, you get back late. We have given every parental responsibility to educational institutions. And I think it is something that the older generation may have to the younger generation, because the family ultimately has been identified as a source of the link, the conduit for intergenerational transfer of values. Guarantee that when I send my child to school, change. But when children's chances are that they use those values, the next day he got everything wrong. The next time he brought homework, I was, please don't touch my book. Older generation will learn new things, right? Instead of sending the child to school from morning till evening, in the evening there is another teacher at home waiting for the child so that he comes and then we help with the homework. Times are hard. There are pressures on our time, but at least we should be able to, ensure that we are part about the young persons. To reinforce what she says, respect for elderly, the patience, right? The patience to endure difficult times. That is what is going to help us to reach to see the picture that we want to see. But if you don't have that patience, we always want to use the shortcuts, right? The shortcuts leads us to the short and the wrong ways. So please, let's rekindle the spirit of self-help and patriotism in our country as young persons. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In Ghana, everyone below 65 is young, by the way. Just Raphael,
Okay.
your final
Okay.
remark.
So for me, I would say that the current generation is from you. So let's say, let me not give examples, but literally, I believe class structure of youth and that have certain values, things are done from your end. We need to empower the young people, them that yes, your voice truly matters to our young person, is patriotic, and then also understand the value of communalism. There was a wise proverb from the old times, but due to the global perspective, your country will depend on how well you're willing to live, like to volunteer, and to contribute to the betterment of other people. So I'll leave with this quote that says, in the Zulu, they say, Umuntu.
Farida, your closing remark.
For the younger generation, my advice is to lose your sense of entitlement. Nobody owes you anything. There's nothing like a premium that is that cheaper if you are paid for what to volunteer for. But you have to look inside your heart and see what do I care about? What am I passionate about? And get involved in some of these forums and things because at the end of it, we will all enjoy. So it's very important that we make our voice heard. I remember years ago when I was being offered a political appointment. I went initially I wasn't going to take it, but my mother told me something that still sticks with me. That you're always complaining about things not being done right in this country. You have the opportunity to make a difference. Take it or shut up. So at the end of the day, Ghana belongs to all of us. It is our collective responsibility to make this country what we want it to be. So it is not just the political leaders or anything. One thing that I like to say is that it's about our lives and make our lives difficult. Our politicians are our brothers and sisters. We sit with them in the classroom. They are our friends. They are our classmates. So if there's something wrong with the political class, there's something wrong with our society. If our society has those problems, so let's fix our problem. Hopefully, we'll get the political class that we desire later on. Thank you.
What a fantastic note to end on. If you have a If you have a chance to do something, do it or shut up. It's been an exciting panel. I, for one, have learned a lot of things. We have had a number of values that if we are to move forward with the future that we want, we need to live and breathe some of these values, including honesty. Our young people are asking for openness so that when they are involved, it's not just tokenism, that their voice actually matters. And we're also calling upon young people to volunteer. If Ghana is going to be the Ghana that we're proud of and the Ghana that we want to live in future, we also owe it to the generations behind us to begin to serve the nation. We can keep pointing fingers across generations, but if we do not come together to embody the values that we want to see, to live and breathe these values, we cannot expect it from someone else. We cannot keep having this sense of entitlement that it needs to come either from the older generation, the younger generation. For my panelists again, I have Farida Bejo, Rafael Ajana, Dr. Imrana, and Radia. Thank you so much. I'll hand it back to Shamima. Yes, so you can go. Do we, okay, I think a picture, something.
Hello. Please be generous. Be generous with that round of applause. Wow. It's true. I'm just going to use this. We are not doing too well on time because, again, the value of time. This morning, I realized that our senior citizens were already seated long before many of us waltz in as a younger generation. So perhaps one thing we can take from the past and from the older generation for time, other people's time, that is. So let me just take this occasion and this moment to recognize formally some of the dignitaries we have in our midst. We do have, again, from yesterday, they were here and they're here again today. Please, let's welcome with a round of applause and acknowledge the presence of the Honorable former Minister of Finance, Tepe. Let us also recognize the presence of a former minister as well and a member of the current NPP government, the Honorable Hackman Owusu Ajiman. Honorable Hackman and Tekpe, you're all looking fresh. What is the secret? Young men, you have to go to them when there's break and ask them for the secret. And of course, there's one person sitting in between them, the evergreen. There, you have to really see him in chambers for the secret. Let's recognize the presence of the Honorable, Venerable Sam Okujoto. Let us also acknowledge the presence of our kings, chiefs, and queen mothers who are here. Please wave at us. We have some traditional leaders. Thank you so very much. And then give yourselves a round of applause as well. All of you are very VVIP guests. We appreciate your presence. We're going on now. If you feel like stretching, please just get up and stretch yourself because we are moving to another conversation. So please feel free to get up and stretch a bit. Okay. Our next plenary conversation is going to focus on the 4 other thematic areas that the compact addresses. Yesterday, you sat in some. Today, we're going to look at the private sector development, healthcare, climate change, governance, and corruption. And I'll be inviting my guests to take their seats so that we quickly try and go through it. So the discussion will be a reflective one. We're looking at the public interest and link them directly to outcomes from our citizens' engagement. You would know that after the draft compact was prepared, there's been series of citizens' engagements across the country, and today it's almost like a validation sort of. So we're going to go again through these thematic areas and then consolidate with your inputs, especially when we go into the breakout sessions. So please let us welcome from the private sector, Dr. Humphrey Eyim Dake, the president of the Association of Ghana Industries. Please, with a round of applause. On healthcare, we have Dr. Gilbert Backel. He's an independent public health consultant. Welcome him with a round of applause as well. On climate change, we have Professor John Asafwe, Senior Fellow at ACET. Please welcome him with a round of applause. And on governance and corruption, we have Dr. Kojo Asante, Director of Policy Engagement and Partnerships at CDD Ghana. And you have me, the moderator. You may give me to a round of applause. Right. So this panel presents us a conundrum. I'll tell you why shortly. So here we have Mr. Eyim Dake, right? Tell us that he wants a country that is industrialized. He's pushing for industries, for manufacturing, factories, so that he can employ the teeming mass of these four gentlemen in a cabinet room. And we ask all of them to make a case. Mr. Eyim says that this country requires a lot of factories to be powered by energy so that we can employ young people 24/7. He didn't finish before Gilbert jumped into the fray. Said, what are you talking about? Do you even understand the health-seeking behaviors of these young people? You want to create all these factories? Don't you know they are not adopting the necessary health behavioral practices, women, to work in those factories? John was sitting there laughing at these people. If we don't know, the next flood will come and destroy all these factories you want to set up. That climate change is changing everything. So you better think about your adaptation and mitigation measures. To which Kojo laughed. Ha 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 ha. All this will come to naught. Sikanasa. Ashe. We are in a deep hole. So how are they going to resolve this very complex conundrum between them? And yet they have to arrive at a decision. We will see if we can attempt a solution this morning. Start with you, Dr. Humphrey Dake. And I'm sure you've also reviewed the technical paper on the private sector. And 67 years on, we seem to be in a cycle and not expanding opportunities. By way of your words instruction this morning, to find solutions to be done, to put this demographic dividend to good use for the bottom line.
Good afternoon. Good morning, distinguished members here gathered and colleagues on how to create a better Ghana for us all, considering history, considering events playing out, and considering the current state of affairs that we find ourselves in. So proceeding from where we are now, that becomes the real crux of the matter. since history has already given us a lesson, and we can project into the future, looking at what other contemporaries have done. So in the current state of affairs, yes, the hole is that big as you described it, the debt position. And then the draft document that we reviewed, it's underpinned by a number of same old stories of infrastructural difficulties, lack of access to financing to the SME community, low skills development, regulatory issues, microeconomic difficulties, all scattered within the context. So our strong advocacy currently is that through the IMF, you have your activities. It is what it is, so we cannot run away from it. So that becomes a point of reflection. The primary product exportation, such clear program, and then gradually roll it out into a long-term development plan and methodologies that could work. Then the question becomes, then the leaders of authority or the decision makers in the point in time. So 2025 comes in with a new team. It's all about based upon research, where the economy is now, where the country is, what is the paradigm. Sometimes when we engage some agency and they seek to bring about the question, are you in a mature economy as you seek to practice what is being practiced in a mature economy? Go back, developmental paradigm was it? And what sort of policies underpin that said development? So when you are still in the primary stage and you're exporting primary products, you're not in an efficient economy. For you to go leapfrog and deploy the governance structure, but you still ask yourself this. When we were doing this new paradigms of capital formation, since she says the domestic revenue is low, the debt position is huge. How do we think around the box and
okay? So what I mean, if we were playing dominoes at this point in our life, which domino do you suggest will be the one to focus on? So they're not
right. It's a complex one. It's not a one fit size. Industrialization would support our cause. Structures we have a lot of peasant farmers. So our proposal one, let's go into huge commercial farming structure. And therefore, then say deliberately fund it and create major commercial farmers and target your trade trends. What are your trade vulnerabilities? State becomes value addition. Then bring in the factories. Once you do that, the biggest challenge in the room is financing. It gets to a stage, the inflationary basket then becomes a trigger, and your land that you have as a strategy for capital formation. Two points between finance minister, I can't recall finance minister Tekpe, but I can recall to do it through GEA, Ghana Enterprise Agency, and currently seeking to another. But the challenge here is that at what price do you give it to the private sector player or SMEs? In other jurisdictions, including our francophone countries, there are credit guarantee schemes that underwrite such funding, and it softens it, it reduces your risks, and gives you a form of patient funds that gives you the capacity to expand and go into staff formation through a structured approach. Credit guarantee schemes should be introduced to back the financial system through the interventions of the Bank of Ghana and the commercial universal banks to give us the breather to get funding at competitive price to kickstart the productive sector. Currently, the productive sector is low. How do you kickstart it? Those are the couple of solutions I'm giving you from the industrial perspective. Then you deliberately go into value addition. Then you target anchor projects, i.e., projects that can bring a value chain stimulation, like the aluminum value chain, and we're excited about that. But there's the investment that is needed for the refinery, close to $1 billion. We've seen $1 billion coming through the what you call some new growth posts like the oil. Now new growth posts are coming in the green energy space. You need some deliberate intervention. You need bold men to complete the value chain in the aluminum value chain. The cocoa processing. What can we do beyond the traditional one? And what is the difficulty currently that we go out through FDIs and bring in companies to process cocoa, but they can't get beans. Currently, they bring in funding, and then you trigger the subject matter of exemption, which Parliament passed, and it became part of the law. We take advantage of it, and then another group says, no, we do not agree to it. So going forward, we believe there are complexities, and then you need the control of the state through the constitution. It matters. The SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, the abuse of their officers, how are they appointed? There are complexities of issues that comes to play. But straight to the point, we believe that for industrialization that will do us good, agriculture will do us good. The big elephant in the room is funding, and I've given you two proposals on using the land reform and the utilization of lands, and then through capital formation.
And when I do come back to you, I would want to ask the question about would it matter who owns and who would be managing or who would be at the commands when I come back to you. But now let me bring Dr. Aka in. A healthy nation, Gilbert. A healthy nation is what? A wealthy nation. That's what they say to power industry.
Call it the marking scheme, but she has changed the question. Oh no, it's about the concept of health. So the you're looking at. So when we are looking at health in that aspect, if you're a farmer, you need to be healthy. Ghana is not necessarily in the top 10. Probably in the median area, everybody is trying their best. Some broadly, 8 deaths per 100,000 delivery of looking at health. And I think we should be able to personalize. At least I have pocketitis.
Explain further.
My brother here has got pocketitis, and we're all suffering from pocketitis.
What is that?
That is the lack of money in your pockets.
Your pockets.
The message. Oh, Gilbert, how are you? It's been a long time. I said, oh, Kenneth, how are you doing? He said, it's not good to go. My friend is definitely. Another colleague said, hello, Gilbert, how are you? He said, Gilbert, this hospital I'm going, by the time I come back, the money. This is a child with malaria. They have to set up a line. By the time the infant mortality, but to personalize the rest, everybody is working with some amount of a mental disorder. Just ticking the box. But when you sit and engage, depression. So a health, but so whilst that systems fail, then health as people get sick, and then we treat economic, social, as human beings. When we are drum problems, it's because in class, we say a stitch in time says, let my friend here make us economically, I'm not getting floods. Is the resources.
Stations or, our current challenge.
Good.
That's.
We all subscribe to what we call universal health coverage. We call that accessibility. You go there, is the service available for it? Solution to be done to stay healthy. One. Then we going around the country holding signboards. That's what we should be looking at. We should language, because that is not English to intimidate the people who want to be healthy. So one, let's invest in those growing. And where do they grow? In the environment. We wait for people to get malaria, and then so we also need to invest in that. Would you believe? Whilst maybe Coca-Cola says we put in tax, they are influencing the invest in interventions that there's no place to walk. The building code is designed. Say you must have a mosquito net. There must be a law that says the door, all the. And some time back, there was a cholera outbreak.
Cases of individuals, how far can we use that we allow to be imported into the country? All kinds of topics, all are threatening. How do we use the instrument?
Not about a hospital and a clinic. 80% it is in socioeconomics, it is in environment, roads, and making sure people are checked. It's nothing to do with the Ministry of Health. So the core is whether it's health is the Ministry of Agriculture. So if we are taking of a solution, we need to go to an all-government approach of the Ministry of Health. Other sectors need to
Thank you very much. My mate, Minini, is contrived to keep Africa and Ghana under development. Convince me otherwise.
Right. That's a very loaded question. Well, some of what we're experiencing is caused by the current stock, but we cannot be pointing the fingers at them, because over the last 20 years, since 1990, we've also contributed. Let me share a few statistics with you. So when we are talking of from 25 just a few statistics. 25.34 metric tons of CO2 to 42.15 of CO2. So this is just within the last 20, 30 years. So at the advanced countries. And in fact, if upwards, the graph is going and the projections don't look good. Rain, which is going to cause damage, floods, emitted to develop, and they have them anymore. And so that's why we have to do forestation. If I show you the statistics, so we are losing and drier, and we're going to have more rain. So there's a need for some education for people to know the number of trees, because already we flew to the Western region to have citizens engagement. Brown, and this is coming from pollution of our waters. Yeah, so percent of our energy is coming from the dam. We can't rely on hydroelectric power anymore.
Speaking problems.
Right. So form 52% of the workforce and 10% of irrigation. So people are going to commodities like yam, just going to lose their
The next how many years?
Hotter climate and drier climate. We need to find ways of getting them to use more modern inputs, variety and improve variety credit for them so that they can expand their farms. How can they be more productive? How can we use new technologies such also a gender element? Because men to find more fertile lands, when they migrate, and women are affected differently. Women are normally do not have access to land, and it get worse when they migrate. Young children, especially girls, will have to be sent far distances to go and fetch water, go and fetch firewood, and they don't get access. They don't go to school, while the boys may go to school. So this affects their development in school. So we have to find ways of addressing this gender balance to help women who are in this and young girls also adapt and also improve their ways of making earnings and making a living. But it's going to need money. Right? Ghana's budget for adaptation and mitigation up to 2030 is about 32 billion. Now, only 25% of this is going to come from domestic sources, or sometimes we may even have to borrow. Right. So the whole issue of financing is very important. And in fact, we can't rely on external finance because it may not be forthcoming. So we have to look at ways of raising finance domestically. And already we have a challenge because Ghana's revenue to GDP is only 13%. African average is 15%. So how can we find innovative ways of raising finance domestically?
Will we be able to find innovative ways? I mean, how hopeful, honest?
Well, in fact, there are opportunities in mitigation, like renewable energy, where the private sector could come in. Because currently, private sector participation in climate mitigation is almost nil. But if you can tell them that you can actually make money from renewable energy, from mitigation, and from using some of these new techniques, they might be willing to invest. So we have to, banks should find ways of raising new instruments like green bonds, green loans, which can actually make the loans accessible to farmers so that they can access these to try and implement climate smart measures. So there are opportunities to raise revenues domestically, just that we're not doing it. And we have to think seriously about how we can do that.
The urbanization question and the issue of cutting down trees within and making way for residential and commercial properties. To that compact?
Yes. So we do have some goals and targets that we want to reach in this area.
It seems we have too many problems. Action is causing. Just how bad?
All right. We aim to, get say. So just Article 35 of the Constitution say now that has certain elements, help select leaders who form government, basically help us see is that right from your party process for selecting leaders, they're transparent, and then they produce what
to corrupt
happening in practice. And it is going back to if you in your so you cannot expect a corrupted process that produce. So we need to do something serious about do most of it now as some that is thorough enough. You will reduce a lot of the incentives, monies that have been spent in government and most places where you have this condition. And given the problems that have been listed here, much money on something and it doesn't deliver anything. So I think we need to get serious about if we still, and that's a big question, if we still want multi-party democratic state, intergenerational dialogue, issues like rights, inclusivity, how do you protect minorities, persons with disability? You need the rule of law. Society must be able to, be healthy. How do you ensure that even the allocation of resources go to the right places? So I think for me, democracy is the answer. Yeah.
The obviously a demand and a supply side is it, and the expectation is a contributory factor to nation in our politics. What is a
Leadership.
which is obviously not system?
Leadership, because otherwise it becomes a chicken and egg situation and you can go in circles. So every time MPs complain about all the demands they get and then limit the use of money in politics is resisted. Use is resisted. Can't have it both ways. If you have been at the forefront of that change. So I think if you can't eat your cake and have it, and I think we do a lot of that in our current situation. And for me, if we are in a state where we have survived enough, we are going along, but for us to basically take steps backwards, reflect and change course. And the window for me is now. So I think I said, I know that even politicians say there's too much money in politics. What do we do about it? We need to limit it. No, you don't need all the billboards in order to communicate to Ghanaians your programs. We are spending too much money on politics, and people are doing it at grave cost. They are selling their houses, and when you do that, you create very bad incentives. Even when you don't want to be corrupt. When you get there, all the money you owe, you want to get harder for these things to happen so that then we can deal with the real criminals, those who just want to be greedy and all of that. But when we make it so pervasive that everybody that goes in politics have to get engaged in corruption, we will not be able to pursue all the problems that we have.
So we'll be, because we'll be going into the breakout sessions. I just want you to, in your final round, just a minute each, to reflect on whether or not there are any other emerging issues that the breakout should be mindful about and consider. Dr. Dak, I'll start with you.
Thank you. You a question earlier. We are not against sharing. We are not averse to partnerships. I believe strongly we'll be averse to foreigners. I believe there's a reason why we are Ghanaians. I believe there's a reason why the constitution defines who leads the country and then where the mineral resources of the country are domiciled and empowered in the. And the story and the issue grown through the period. Of Ghana are heterogeneous posture into development, then policy, initiatives, and intentions. Okay, I tried to capture a few in the earlier presentation. I love to see a free SHS program and the growth. It has implications. So there's a correlated issue of capital formation, the ventures, and we have a lot of mineral resources. Once we have pension funds and reforms, it is crucial to discuss. We look for and many more. We're still optimistic.
Economy. So we must give special.
Is intimate, and in all that we do, we are important, making sure that the quality, the care we provide is sound. And I think the healthcare in terms of the professionals just happened in Winneba should never immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We should have made it broader to look at the environment or even look at nature, because we are losing biodiversity at a very rapid rate. What can we do to how can we reduce the rapid rate of deforestation? Breakout, we can look at some of these areas because they are still very relevant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It needs some resuscitation. It needs some completely gone, it's dying. People don't really in the medians of our roads, and you ask yourself, who's local government in very, and that's why I think the affirmative action you can have over in Ghana 2024. It's mind-boggling. So all our reforms.
So we have 4 groups, and for the registered to be there, it's seminar room 2, climate. Yeah. For the reform is which here. So the panel would be on brands here. Please get up so that the people will see you, and when they locate you, they know they're in the right room. So that's Selom brands here. You can cling to his frock and he will lead you to the place. And the facilitator for that. So health is Dr. Gilbert Buckle. Selom brands here, Umar Sanda Amadou. Rapporteur is Abida Abdullahi. For climate is Professor John Asafaje. The resource lead is Professor John Asafaje himself. He's doing 2. And the facilitator is Dr. Yao Aj. So that's Doc, right? And the rapporteur is Marie Noel Nokolo. Governance and corruption, Kojo Asante is the main man for that one, so he will take care of everybody. You saw Kojo earlier. Private sector development, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake will be on the panel. Seth Akwabwa is the resource lead. Seth is Seth in here. So there's Seth to my left. And Charles Boating will be the facilitator. Charles is there as well. And rapporteur is Michael Esiedu. And yes, so the accountability mechanism is the same as is that different? Okay, so that's what we will do. So please kindly get up and make your way respectfully to your one. Right. So for the constitutional reform, Rishaya Ibrahim Tanko and Gertrude Soa will be the rapporteurs. They are here. So here to my right, constitutional review, and the other health to my left. Okay. Private sector, seminar room 2. We have, let me just see how much time we have. So the brief, we make our contributions. The earlier we would close for lunch. Okay, thank you for your patience. 12:10. So we come by 1:45. We go straight to lunch. Okay, so once you're done, 1:45 session. We'll see you all in here. So we should all plan to be back in the hall by 2:45. Thank you.
It's for the international DJ Shinsky. Oh, that I wanna be with you.
Sorry, those of you here, did any of you yesterday raise your hand for the Constitution group? Mm. I want to borrow some of you to the Constitution group. Ellen, I beg. Mm, it doesn't matter. You're fine. Okay, they say they are fine. So it's okay. But if you want to come by, you are free to come by. Okay. All right. Yep, young men, you can't find your location.
Hello? Yeah, it's going to disturb them. Oh, okay.
My name is the private sector doing. My bill. So, what the rich of Asia. For us, we are still waiting for a lecture, right? The target. But let me give you a background here. What we have here at the private sector government. And as we have read it, so some of you may have seen how your delivery in your but again, and what we are trying to do for this, I get development on the sector, Ghana, and said, I don't have any use to tell the private sector of the and they are bigger for credit when you look at the contributions to GDP. When you look at this contribution, we don't increase in complain that the private sector is bigger. While these opportunities are there, these are the challenges that are very out for the game. The first one is SME or asset finance. The second one we are looking at contracted or the private sector is the perspective of the infrastructure. The third one we are looking at the delivery framework that covers the private sector activity. And the last one is skilled employment of the skill gap that can be had. So if you have issue, all the targets and goals that we have been, we did not just sit at other office we considered comment of the organizations or companies under the private sector. We considered comment on embassies under the private sector. And we also came to our ratings and ratings and we also get your comment. That is what has been the target that we have set. We are still trying to raise 700. We have a flip chart can write the target see them, but once we do that, we are going to the targets are thinking and it's very short in the so some of the so we will get it. Somebody is going to down. Some of for those that have to be done, they want to bring away, as I said, access to finance, or equity, or one of the concepts that SME is fine. The other one is contracted or the third is very able to finance. The fourth one is we have to be able to achieve privacy. Even before the flip chart comes, I don't know, is there for those that are working the future, is there any of the targets that maybe by looking at the target, that it also minus okay, so let me read for the targets. You are going to have a very long have issue with the target I'm setting for every passing like piece of the thing that all years it's too much. Yes, you say someone like for this standing level sound. You have any problem like this? These are but we have also decided so when you look at the Ghana, people want to know the area, accept the target, all is not in our internet. Everybody is finding there. So we need things about the all that's all of us in that will be so skip down. We just know that that's for the sure. This is for the foreign that's 40% of my head have nothing on now this harvest the target is saying that how we charge them power it's 100% everybody gathers to have a and therefore you can answer things. We also want to have another actually access already let's say 40% of the food current thing after but not that sure. We'll think that now the need for the rest of it but so it's very clear. I'm here to give it.
Tech incubator and all that. But we don't see
Please, can we
government
hear you?
intervention. I hope you can hear me. I'm louder than this, so you can't see government's intervention in supporting startups. You understand? I studied in China, and by virtue of that, I became the first African to start up a tech company in China, and I built a $40 million company in China, a tech company in China, the first black man. Process, deliberate process by the government. For example, if I come here and I maybe conduct a research and I say, maybe how many people love apples here, right? And I realize that maybe 60-70% of people seated here love apples. So that data, I can use that data to go to, let's say, Charles, and say, Charles, look, I have this group of people that they are my target market. About 70% love apples. So give me money to go into what? Farming. That is viable, right? There are a lot of ideas that a lot of you young people, right, have. But of course, the system does not provide you that kind of financial, they don't meet your financial needs to be able to execute your ideas. When you go to the bank as a young graduate, you finish, you have a very viable idea, you go to the bank, you don't even have a collateral. But then the interest rate is 30%. How are you going to sustain? How are you going to even be competitive in the market? If I need 10,000 CDs for my business, I can raise it from equally like 100 people here, right? And of course, the business doesn't go well. You lose only 100 rather than one person. So let's move away from the loans system.
Under finance, the second point, we are talking about alternative markets. And I think that is what he's talking about. It's captured under point 2. So that's the other option. But we wanted to take a decision on our brother's proposal regarding the railway, the 5-year that we have given. Is this something that you think that we have to do something about? If you can finish on that point. Kindly.
Thank you very much. I'm Osman Ibrahim, representing Association of Small Scale Industry, Bono East region. Like my brother Sabanos.
I hope it's still on the railway.
Yes, please.
I wanted us to finish.
That is exactly what I am hitting on. I am from Techiman, Professor Akufi Amio, the then railway minister, was also from Techiman. And you know, to Paga, we were all happy. You can imagine from his time till now. And we are now talking about 5 years. Is it magic or is just by writing? We should be sincere and honest to ourselves. 5 years from now, believe.
It is feasible.
I don't want to conclude by saying it is not possible, but the possibility to make it possible is impossible.
And
5 years from now, building railway from here, or should I say, to have a railway like what we've stated in 5 years, well, we pray into reality. Thank you very much. So we should extend the date. I propose, even if 10 years is okay, so far as life is concerned, fine. But if not,
thank you very much. Bridget, please, you can come.
This is the Ghana Compact. I think those of us, they put these, the parties that we've had in power have put some of these things in their manifestos and promised because the resources have been squandered. Yeah. And we, the people, why? Because we put them there, we trusted them. So we are saying, we, the people, this is what we want. It lacks about what. Look at some of the projects that came up and were completed before elections because people want to be elected. Yeah. Look at the infrastructural projects. It is possible. It is possible if they know that they are there. And I'm a politician. If you know that your votes and your election is dependent on finishing these projects, or you want to be these projects to be what you will show off so that you are elected, you will do it. Yeah. They did it. They did Kaswa. They did what's the name of that place? Dubai. They did Dubai. They did Rich Hospital. They did. So it is possible if we the people hold them accountable. So let's not say, oh, it's not possible. It's possible. We should hold them accountable.
All right. Thank you very much. Before you come in,
no problem. I'm not buttressing or rather refuting what you are saying. But since you are in the shoes of politicians, yes. But you made mention of, looking at where Ghana comes from. Yeah, if only.
Thank you very much.
The reason I say so is that there are ways of that. If you're only looking at national sector, some of these major infrastructure have massive to Paga, and the work that is going on is from different sources, from Tema. Now, when you do Buankra and you don't get the railways connected, the Buankra project will be virtually rendered useless. I know that in the Western Corridor, the railway is coming. It's quite close. And the idea is that when you do Buankra and you get the Western connected, ultimately they want to reduce importance. And you also want to use the railway line as carrying of goods for exports. So if you want to devote to Paga, it's not enough. Let's also add the railway from Tema to Buankra to Kumasi. Of course, the western one is close to completion. I wouldn't say it's completed. There's a lot more work to be done. But all these three are critical railway lines that has to be done. I will also add that on the major roads, we put here complete major roads. I think we should qualify it a little bit and make it the dualization, because complete can be anything. It can still be the single lane. I know there are certain portions that are being dualized because of the bypasses that are being done. But let's be very clear that I don't see why in today's Ghana, between Accra and Kumasi, and between Accra and say Cape Coast or Takoradi, we don't have dual carriage all the way. So let's be very clear and be specific on it. Thank you.
So Seth is proposing, before I come, he's proposing that instead of complete, we make it dualization.
Do we agree so that I change accordingly? All right. Thank you very much.
Don't think it's working. Hello. Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Grace Krabedusei. I'm a certified speaker, coach, and trainer, and I'm here with the Executive Women's Network. So I have a little thing with the we're talking about widening the tax net. We're talking about from 30 to 50% within 5 years. I have a problem with the amount of taxes that we pay. And when you import something into the country, especially by when you ship in things, I mean, we have at least more than a dozen taxes that you have to pay. So at the end of the day, how will you, how do you have the moral right to ask people to pay taxes when the tax is too much already? Okay, so it's going to be like going forward and then going back 2 steps because people will not want to be taxed because the tax is too high. So, first of all, we have to look at how much tax we are paying, all the items in the all their items included in the taxes. We are still paying COVID levy, and we want to know how they're using the money, the COVID levy, for example. So you go out to eat. About 30% of your bill is taxes. It's too much. So if our government wants more people to pay tax and be happy to pay tax, they need to be accountable about how the tax is being used and and reduce just a list. The list of taxes is ridiculous. All right. And we're not even seeing the development. So we need to see that, that will help people to want to pay tax. If you want people to pay tax, reduce the taxes. Thank you.
All right. Before we've gotten a point, I think she's talking about the fact that taxes are too much. I think yesterday at the fiscal room, we learned that Ghana is countries within the sub-region that collects the less tax. It doesn't change the fact that the taxes is skewed, few people are paying, but what is very important is that we have to increase it. And when you look at the bigger paper that we've written, it's not limiting taxes to only those that are paying. We are prescribing to the government to open the tax nets. So that is what we are looking at. Taxes is what make our country better. But before any of you come in, I want Honorable Setekwe to come in. He has a comment to make.
Yes. So yeah, thank you very much. I just want to make a brief comment on infrastructure. The truth is that we cannot sustain infrastructure from the taxes that we collect on a year-to-year basis. If you follow, and I urge you to look at the source of financing of the trillions of investments that President Biden wants to do in the US, it has generated a debate on borrowing from the financial markets through their bonds. Now, when President Obama came and he said what we need are institutions, we needed to develop our capital markets, the so-called standards. And one of the things we did was to move the government's bonds to the stock exchange and to make sure that when you are, so when you are on the stock exchange, you cannot sustain yourself on the stock exchange if you keep borrowing and you don't repay, because you just be going up, and before long, you end up, in catastrophe, right? That was the essence of the sinking fund, which we set up. Now the government bonds, which we use, they were just 3 year and 5 year. 5 year, maybe you can repay major projects in 5 years. But the minimum for major projects like railway, harbor, and the rest is 10 years back, so that the project itself would help to pay for the loan. It shouldn't be the taxpayer. The project itself, because it's a commercial project, will learn to pay for itself. When we move the bonds were virtually oversubscribed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And then you have pension funds and others coming in to buy the bonds. Okay. It's the collapse of the repayment mechanism that led to the default. And the repayment mechanism came from the stabilization fund in the PRMA, which was vigorously debated. I mean, the majority leader is here, vigorously debated, because it was meant to help us resolve areas where our budgets were not good at resolving. Okay. Now we talk about China. If anybody is here, just Google China Development Bank ratings. China Development Bank ratings is A+, A, investment grade. Google China Exim Bank ratings. The notion that is the Chinese government that gives money to CDB and Exim is something we should just forget about. With AAA, you are borrowing as virtually LIBOR plus, maybe what, 0.2 or 1%. So China Development Bank gets that. Then they introduce a blend, which is what they are going to borrow at low interest rates. And the grants that they should have, pure grant that they should have given to Ghana, and they do a blend and give you at 6%. Of course, the 6% is better than what you are doing even on the stock exchange at, London Stock Exchange through our bonds at, what? We did 10.2 and then 8, the best we did was 8.5. So Africa's middle income countries, including Ghana, should learn from these examples of advanced countries and the rest and begin to develop institutions. Right. So if we develop our institutions, at least as far as city borrowing is concerned, we can get it in forests. Right. The sinking fund and that is very, very important. I like to. Secondly, borrowing. How many of you the airport tax that we all pay, which is in company? Airport should be structural investment for them. For example, African Development Bank, HSBC, and others. Right? You'll be able to go and borrow. This when you go to Dubai, you will of the capital market. So China is heading towards A is A minus. The state has taken over, and then the rest which are paid in dollars. It took was if you did Terminal 3, and it has come to pass, it's true. China due to become a brick, right? Africa's middle income countries should be 1% over a long period of time.